Mila's pencil moved across the notebook in steady strokes. She sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, sketching the face she'd seen 3 times this week. The man with the scar over his left eyebrow, the one who kept looking up at their apartment window. Her father's voice cut through her concentration. "Mila, come here, now." She closed the notebook and walked to the living room. Her father, Dmitry Petrov, sat at the table with 3 men she didn't recognize. Cigarette smoke hung thick in the air. Her father gestured to her notebook. "Show them." Mila opened it and flipped through pages of faces, cars, license plates, details she'd been taught to notice, to remember, to draw. One of the men leaned forward to study her work. "The girl has a gift." Her father's hand squeezed her shoulder too tight. "She's useful." That's all Mila had ever been. Useful. The door to their apartment exploded inward an hour after the men left. Mila was in her room, adding shading to the scarred man's portrait, when the shouting started. Russian voices, her father begging, her mother screaming. Then gunshots. 3 of them. Sharp, final. Mila's pencil clattered to the floor. She crawled to her bedroom door and peeked through the crack. Men in black, 5 of them. One stepped over her mother's body without looking down. A voice she recognized asked the question that made her blood freeze. "Where's the daughter?" Another man answered. "Bedroom." Mila's hands shook as she grabbed her notebook. The air vent. The one her father never knew she'd discovered. She pulled the grate free, squeezed inside, and replaced it just as her bedroom door burst open. Through the metal slats, she watched boots circle her empty room. "She's gone. Check the building." She couldn't have gone far. They tore her room apart, threw her mattress, shattered her lamp, and then they left. Mila stayed in the vent for 2 hours, waiting, listening, her parents' bodies growing cold in the next room. When silence finally settled, she crawled out. There was only one place to go, the apartment next door, the one where the quiet man lived, the one nobody ever visited, the one her mother had once whispered about with fear in her voice. "That man has killed more people than you can count, Mila. Stay away from him." But killers knew how to hide from killers. Mila knocked on Viktor Sokolov's door. Viktor Sokolov lived by 3 rules. Stay invisible. No emotional attachments. No children. The girl at his door violated all 3. She was maybe 11, covered in blood spatter, clutching a notebook like a lifeline. Her eyes were dry. No tears, just shock. She spoke in Russian. "They killed my family. You're the only one who can hide me." Victor's hand tightened on the doorframe. "I don't help people. I know who you are. The Phantom. My father talked about you." She glanced down the hallway. "Please, they're coming back." Every instinct screamed at Victor to close the door. He'd survived 20 years in the Bratva by staying alone, by caring about nothing, by being a ghost. But the girl held her notebook the same way his daughter used to. Before the car bomb meant for him killed her instead. Before he'd learned that loving anything made you weak. He stepped aside. 5 minutes, then you leave. Mila walked into his apartment. It was empty. 1 chair, 1 table, no photographs, no warmth. Weapons hidden in compartments she could already identify. She'd learned to spot them from her father. Victor gave her water, said nothing. She drank, studying him with the same analytical silence he used when surveilling targets. Victor finally broke the silence. "You're evaluating me." "You're evaluating me too." Mila set down the glass, trying to decide if I'm worth the risk. "Smart kid. Too smart." Victor crossed his arms. "Why did they kill your family?" "My father was an informant for the FBI. He was about to testify against Sergei Volkov." She opened her notebook and showed him a detailed sketch of a man with a scarred eyebrow. This man led the execution. Victor recognized the face immediately. Volkov's enforcer. "Your father got sloppy." "I know," no emotion in her voice. Shock, Victor realized. She was running on survival instinct alone. The grief would hit later. "Volkov's men will search this building." Victor kept his voice flat. "You need to leave the city." "Where?" Mila's hands finally trembled. "My grandmother's in Moscow. My aunt won't take me. I have nobody." "Orphanage. Police station." "Volkov owns both." She met his eyes. "You know this?" Victor did know. The Bratva had infiltrated every system that could protect a child witness. "Then you're dead. Unless someone makes me invisible." Mila flipped through her notebook. Pages of faces, addresses, license plates. "I've been documenting Bratva operations for 6 months. My father made me. He called it a game, but I knew. I have information worth killing for." Victor studied the sketches. Precise, Photographic detail. This child had an intelligence goldmine in her hands. Burn it. No. Milia's jaw set. This is the only thing that keeps me alive. If Volkov knows I have this, he'll negotiate instead of kill. Children don't negotiate with the Bratva. I'm not a child anymore. Her voice cracked for the first time. I stopped being a child when I watched my mother die. Silence stretched between them. Victor made calculations. The girl was a liability, a target, a complication he couldn't afford. But she was also 11 years old, and somewhere deep in the place where Victor had buried his humanity 20 years ago, something stirred. 2 days. I'll find you somewhere safe. Then you disappear. Mila nodded. Neither of them believed it would only be 2 days. Day 2. Volkov's men returned to sweep the building. Victor heard their boots in the stairwell, their radios crackling with coordination, too organized, too thorough. He moved to the hidden compartment behind his wardrobe. Mila, get in. Don't breathe. Don't move. She climbed inside without hesitation. The panel closed, leaving her in complete darkness. Through a crack in the wood, she could see a sliver of Victor's apartment. Heavy knocking. Victor opened the door and stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance. His posture was relaxed, but Mila recognized the stance. Ready to kill. 2 enforcers pushed past him. We're checking apartments. Petrova's kid escaped. You seen a girl? Maybe 11. Dark hair? Victor's voice was flat. Haven't seen a child. The men searched anyway, tearing through his sparse belongings, opening closets, checking under the bed. One of them moved toward the wardrobe. Mila held her breath. Her heart hammered so loud she was certain they'd hear it. The enforcer's hand reached for the wardrobe door. Victor's hand moved to his concealed knife. Mila saw his fingers wrap around the handle. The enforcer's radio crackled. Found something in the basement. All units move out. They left. Victor waited 30 seconds before opening the compartment. Mila emerged, her legs shaking. You were going to kill them. Her voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Victor replaced his knife in its hidden sheath. Because of me. Because they were in my space. Victor's eyes were cold. Don't mistake this for protection. I eliminate threats. That's all. But Mila saw the truth. He'd been ready to blow his cover, end his invisibility, destroy everything he'd built for 20 years, for her. Day 3 brought a new problem. Mila woke to find Victor at his table, studying a laptop screen. His jaw was tight, angry. What's wrong? She sat up on the couch where she'd been sleeping. Your father's testimony. Victor turned the screen toward her. The FBI released portions of it after his death. Volkov knows exactly what he told them. Mila looked at the documents. Names, dates, locations. Her father had given them everything. Is that bad? It's catastrophic. Victor closed the laptop. Volkov can't let this stand. He'll execute everyone your father mentioned. Witnesses, contacts, anyone connected, including the agents protecting them. Mila's stomach dropped. How many people? 12 families, 47 people total. Victor's voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes betrayed something else. Calculation. He was already making plans. Can you stop it? Victor stood and walked to the window. Not my problem. I'm a killer, not a savior. But you could. Mila stood too, clutching her notebook. My father's notes have details the FBI doesn't. Meeting locations, safe houses, communication protocols. You could warn them. Why would I risk that? Because you're already risking it, for me. Mila opened her notebook to a page of detailed sketches. Volkov's operation center, guard rotations, security systems. If you help them, they'll help me. Witness protection. New identity. I disappear for real. Victor stared at the sketches. The girl had documented Bratva headquarters like a professional surveillance operative. This information could save dozens of lives, or get him killed trying. He met her eyes. 11 years old and already negotiating like a strategist. 2 days, you said. Mila's voice was steady now. You find me somewhere safe. I leave. This is how you do it. Use my information. Trade it for my protection. Victor realized the truth. This child wasn't a victim. She was a survivor, and she'd just offered him something he'd spent 20 years avoiding. A purpose beyond killing. He picked up his phone. 1 call. If they agree, we move tonight. Mila nodded. They'll agree. Victor made the call from a secure line. The conversation was brief, coded, professional. When he hung up, his expression was unreadable. Mila sat at his table, her notebook open in front of her. Well? They want to meet. Victor checked his weapon, a routine so automatic he barely seemed aware of doing it. Tonight, neutral location. You come with me. Why me? Mila's hands tightened on her pencil. Because they don't trust me. But they'll trust a child who has nothing to gain from lying. Victor slid the gun into his shoulder holster. You tell them what you know. They verify it. If it checks out, they offer protection. And if it doesn't check out? Mila already knew the answer, but she needed to hear him say it. Then we both have a problem. Victor met her eyes. They'll think I'm setting them up. I'll be marked for death by the FBI and the Bratva. You'll be marked as collateral. So this only works if my information is good. Your information better be perfect. Victor grabbed his jacket, because if one detail is wrong, if one location doesn't match, if one name is fabricated, we're both dead by morning. Mila felt the weight of that responsibility settle on her shoulders. Her father had made her memorize everything, made her draw until her hand cramped, made her repeat names and addresses until she could recite them in her sleep. She'd thought it was paranoia. Now she understood it was preparation. My information is perfect. Mila closed her notebook and stood. My father was many things, but he wasn't careless with details. If he told me something, it's true. Victor studied her for a long moment. You're 11 years old. You should be worried about homework and friends. Instead, you're negotiating with FBI agents and trading intelligence like a veteran operative. I stopped being 11 when I watched my parents die. Mila's voice was flat. You keep saying that like it's going to change something. It won't. Victor recognized that tone. He'd heard it in his own voice years ago, after his daughter's funeral. The sound of someone who'd crossed a line they could never uncross. He grabbed a second jacket from his closet. Here, it'll be cold. Mila put it on. It swallowed her small frame, the sleeves hanging past her fingertips. She looked even younger, even more vulnerable. One rule. Victor crouched down to her eye level. When we get there, you stay next to me. You don't wander. You don't talk to anyone I haven't cleared first. And if I tell you to run, you run. No questions. No hesitation. Understood? Understood. Mila rolled up the jacket sleeves. But you should know something too. What? I'm not staying next to you because I'm scared. Mila met his eyes with that same analytical stare. I'm staying next to you because you're the most dangerous person in any room, and that makes you the safest place to be. Victor almost smiled. Almost. Smart kid. They left the apartment as the sun set over Brighton Beach. Victor's car was parked 3 blocks away, deliberately far from his building. They walked in silence, Victor scanning every shadow, every parked car, every open window. Mila noticed everything he noticed, cataloged it, stored it away. She was learning from him without even trying. The car was unremarkable. A decade-old sedan, maintained but not flashy, nothing that would draw attention. Victor opened the passenger door for her. Mila climbed in and buckled her seatbelt. Where are we meeting them? An abandoned warehouse in Red Hook. Victor started the engine. Very cliché, but very secure. No civilians, no witnesses. If this goes wrong, no collateral damage. Except us. Except us. Victor pulled into traffic. But it won't go wrong. How do you know? Because you're right. Your information is perfect, and I don't fail. Victor's hands were steady on the wheel. We're going to walk in there, give them everything they need, and walk out with a deal that keeps you alive. Mila looked out the window at the passing city lights. And what about you? What about me? Do you walk out alive too? Victor didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched for several blocks. Eventually he spoke, his voice quieter than before. That depends on what happens after you're safe. The warehouse smelled like rust and old motor oil. Victor parked 2 blocks away and they walked the rest of the distance. Mila's oversized jacket flapped in the cold wind coming off the water. 3 black SUVs were already parked near the entrance, not FBI vehicles. Too clean, too expensive, private security or something else entirely. Victor's hand moved to his concealed weapon. Stay close. They approached the main entrance. The door opened before Victor could knock. A man in a dark suit stepped out, his hand resting casually on his own holster. Victor Sokolov. The man's voice was neutral. And you brought the girl. She has information you need. Victor kept his body positioned between Mila and the guard. We talked to whoever's in charge. Nobody else. The guard spoke into his radio, then stepped aside. They're waiting inside. The warehouse interior was exactly what Mila expected. Concrete floors, exposed beams, shadows everywhere. 6 more men in suits positioned around the space, all armed, all watching. In the center stood a woman in her 40s, hair pulled back, wearing a business suit that looked out of place in the decrepit surroundings. She held a tablet and studied them with sharp, intelligent eyes. Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. The woman's gaze moved from Victor to Mila. You're Dmitry Petrov's daughter. Yes. Mila stepped forward, ignoring Victor's protective instinct to hold her back. And you're here because you need what I know. Agent Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Respect, maybe. Direct. I appreciate that. Your father was going to testify against Sergei Volkov. We had him in protective custody. Obviously that failed. He was already dead when you put him in custody. Mela's voice was matter of fact. Volkov owned someone inside your operation. That's how they found him so fast. Agent Chen's jaw tightened. We suspected as much, but couldn't prove it. I can prove it. Mila opened her notebook. My father made me document everything. Meeting locations, safe house addresses, communication protocols. I have 6 months of surveillance. She flipped to a specific page, including the FBI agent who's been feeding information to Volkov. The warehouse went completely silent. Agent Chen stepped closer, studying the sketch. This is Special Agent Marcus Cole. He's been on Volkov's payroll for 18 months. Mila showed her another page, this one covered in dates and dollar amounts. My father documented every payment, every meeting, every piece of intelligence Cole sold. Agent Chen's hands trembled slightly as she took the notebook. If this is accurate, this is the biggest breach we've had in a decade. It's accurate. Victor spoke for the first time since entering. The girl has a photographic memory. Everything in that notebook can be verified. Agent Chen flipped through page after page. Faces, license plates, addresses, coded communications. It was intelligence goldmine. This information could dismantle Volkov's entire operation. That's why I'm still alive. Mila crossed her arms. Volkov knows I have this. He can't risk killing me if it means everything gets released. Right now I'm leverage. The moment you take me into custody, I become a liability. He'll eliminate. So what do you want? Agent Chen closed the notebook. Witness protection. Real protection. Not whatever failed system got my father killed. New identity, new location, new everything. Mila's voice was steady, and you verify the information first. Every detail, every name. If even one thing doesn't check out, the deal's off. That could take weeks. Then I wait. Mila glanced at Victor. He keeps me safe until you're done verifying. When you're satisfied everything is real, you give me a new life, one Volkov can never find. Agent Chen studied them both. And what does he get out of this? I walk away. Victor's voice was flat. No questions about my past. No investigations. No surveillance. The girl gets protection. I get to disappear. You're asking for immunity. I'm asking for what I've always had, invisibility. Victor stepped closer. I've never been on your radar before. This deal keeps it that way. Agent Chen made calculations. What Victor was offering, information that could bring down a major organized crime figure, was worth far more than one freelance assassin's freedom. She pulled out her phone and made a call. The conversation was brief, coded, professional. When she hung up, she nodded. 24 hours. We verify the first batch of information. If it checks out, we move forward with protection protocols. The girl stays with you until then. If anything happens to her, the deal's off and you become priority target number 1. Understood. Victor placed a hand on Mila's shoulder. She stays safe. That's not negotiable. Agent Chen handed back the notebook. We'll need copies of everything. Digital scans. Can you bring them tomorrow? Same time, same place. Victor guided Mila toward the door. And Agent Chen? If anyone follows us tonight, if anyone even looks at us wrong, you'll never see this information again. Nobody will follow you. Agent Chen's expression was grim. We have bigger problems now. If Cole is compromised, we need to move fast before Volkov realizes we know. They left the warehouse and walked back to Victor's car in silence. Mila clutched her notebook against her chest. The city lights reflected off the dark water of the harbor. Victor started the engine. You did well in there. I told the truth. That's all. Mila buckled her seatbelt. Do you think they'll really protect me? If the information checks out, yes, the FBI doesn't want another dead witness. Victor pulled onto the highway, but 24 hours is a long time. Volkov will figure out we met with them eventually. So we stay invisible. Mila looked out the window. Like you taught me. Victor glanced at her. I didn't teach you anything. Yes, you did. You taught me that sometimes the safest place is next to the most dangerous person. Mila's voice was quiet, and right now, that's you." Victor didn't respond, but something in his expression shifted. For 20 years he'd been alone. For 20 years he'd avoided attachments. But this girl, with her notebook full of secrets and her eyes that had seen too much, had somehow become his responsibility, and maybe in some strange way his purpose. They drove back to Brighton Beach as the city settled into night. Tomorrow, the FBI would verify her information. Tomorrow, Mila would get her new life. But tonight, she was still just a girl who'd lost everything, and Victor was still the killer who'd decided, against every instinct, to keep her alive. Back at Victor's apartment, the silence felt different, less tense, almost comfortable. Mila set her notebook on the table and collapsed onto the couch. Victor locked the door with 3 separate locks, checked the window, then finally allowed himself to relax slightly. "You're hungry." Starving. Mila hadn't eaten since morning. The adrenaline of the meeting had suppressed her appetite, but now it came roaring back. Victor opened his refrigerator. It was nearly empty. A bottle of vodka, some eggs, half a loaf of bread. The sustenance of a man who'd forgotten how to live like a human being. He pulled out the eggs. "I can make this work." Mila watched him crack eggs into a pan with surprising competence. "You cook?" "Survival skill." Victor added salt without measuring. "When you live alone, you either learn or you starve." "My mom used to make blinis every Sunday." Mila's voice softened with memory. "Thin pancakes with jam and sour cream. My dad would complain they were too sweet, but he always ate 6 of them." Victor flipped the eggs. "My daughter liked pancakes too. American style, with chocolate chips." He paused. She was 7 when she died. The admission hung in the air between them. Mila understood why Victor had opened the door that first night, why he'd risked everything for her. "She looked like me?" Mila asked quietly. "No." Victor slid the eggs onto a plate. "She looked like her mother, but she drew pictures constantly. Just like you." He set the plate in front of Mila with bread and a glass of water. It wasn't much, but it was more care than Victor had shown another person in 2 decades. Mila ate slowly, savoring each bite. "When was the last time you cooked for someone?" Victor sat across from her with his own plate, 23 years ago, the night before the car bomb. "I'm sorry." Mila meant it. She understood loss now, understood the weight of it. "Don't be." Victor's voice was flat again. Walls rebuilding. "It made me better at my job. No attachments means no hesitation. But you hesitated for me." Mila met his eyes. "When those men came to search the apartment, you were ready to blow your cover. That's hesitation. That's elimination of a threat. You keep telling yourself that." Mila pushed her empty plate away. "But I think you're lying, to yourself, not to me." Victor stood abruptly and took their plates to the sink. "You should sleep. Tomorrow will be complicated." The next morning, Victor's phone rang at 6. He answered on the second ring, listened without speaking, then hung up. Mila was already awake, sketching in her notebook. She'd learned to sleep light, to wake at any unusual sound. What did they say? First verification came back clean. Agent Chen's team confirmed 3 of the addresses and 2 of the names. "They want more today." "That's good, right?" Mila closed her notebook. "It's progress." Victor checked his weapon. A morning ritual. But it also means Volkov might be getting nervous. If he has other sources in the FBI, he'll know they're investigating. "So we stay here?" "No." Victor holstered his gun. "Staying in one place too long makes us targets. We move." He took her to a different safe house. An apartment in Queens owned by someone who owed him a favor. 2 bedrooms, functional kitchen, windows that faced a busy street. Better sightlines. Victor checked every room thoroughly. Harder to approach without being seen. They settled into a strange routine over the next 3 days. Victor would receive calls from Agent Chen with verification requests. Mila would flip through her notebook, provide details, wait for confirmation. In between, they existed in an odd domesticity. Victor taught her how to check for surveillance. Mila taught him that 11-year-olds needed more than eggs and bread. On the 3rd day, Victor returned from a supply run with actual groceries: pasta, sauce, vegetables, even ice cream. Mila stared at the bags. "You bought food?" "You complained." Victor unpacked with the efficiency of someone executing a mission, constantly. "I mentioned once that I missed real meals." Mila fought back a smile. "That's not complaining." "You mentioned it 4 times. Victor's expression remained neutral, but there was something softer underneath. "And you're 11, you need to eat properly." They cooked together that evening. Mila directed from the counter while Victor followed her instructions with military precision. The pasta was overcooked, and the sauce was too salty. but it was the first real meal either of them had eaten in days. This is terrible. Mila took another bite anyway. Agreed. Victor ate with the same determination he brought to everything, but better than eggs. Much better. Mila watched him across the small kitchen table. Can I ask you something? You will regardless of my answer. Why did you become a killer? Mila's directness was one of her defining traits. My father said you were the best, the phantom. Nobody could track you. Nobody could stop you. But why did you start? Victor set down his fork. That's not a question you ask someone like me. You're not killing me for asking it, Mila pointed out. So you might as well answer. Victor was quiet for a long moment. When his daughter died, he'd stopped answering personal questions. Stopped having conversations that went deeper than logistics and targets. I was good at it. His voice was careful, measured. And when you're good at something, people pay you to do it. That's all. That's not all. Mila leaned forward. My father was good at lying. Really good. But he did it because he was scared. What were you scared of? Victor met her eyes. This child saw too much, understood too much, feeling anything. And did it work? Mila already knew the answer. Did you stop feeling? For 20 years, Victor stood and began clearing the table. Then you knocked on my door. They washed dishes in silence. Victor scrubbing with methodical efficiency, Mila drying and putting away. A small moment of normalcy in their abnormal situation. That night, Mila woke to find Victor sitting in the dark living room, staring out the window. She padded out quietly and sat on the couch beside him. Can't sleep? She pulled a blanket around her shoulders. Habit. Victor didn't look away from the window. I haven't slept more than 4 hours a night in 2 decades. Why? Sleeping makes you vulnerable. Victor's voice was flat. Vulnerable gets you killed. But you're sleeping more now. Mila had noticed. He'd actually slept 6 hours the previous night. I heard you snoring. I don't snore. You definitely snore. Mila smiled slightly. It's like an angry bear. Victor almost laughed. Almost. Go back to bed. Only if you do too. Mela stood and held out her hand. Come on, we both need rest. Tomorrow Agent Chen should have the final verification. Victor looked at her outstretched hand. Such a small gesture. Such enormous implications. For 20 years he'd touched others only to kill them. He took her hand and stood. Fine. But I don't snore. You absolutely snore. Mila led him back toward the bedrooms. And tomorrow I'm buying earplugs. This time, Victor did laugh. A small sound, rusty from disuse, but real. They went to their separate rooms. Victor lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Mila settle in next door. For the first time in 20 years, he felt something other than emptiness. He felt responsible. He felt protective. He felt terrifyingly like he had something to lose again. And across the hall, Mila lay in her own bed, clutching her notebook. For the first time since her parents died, she felt safe. Not because of where she was, but because of who was keeping watch. Day 6. Victor's phone rang at dawn. Agent Chen's voice was tight with urgency. We verified everything. Every name, every address, every payment. Your information is solid. We're moving forward with protection protocols immediately. Good. Victor glanced at Mila, who was already awake and watching him. When do we transfer her? That's the problem. Agent Chen's tone shifted. Marcus Cole disappeared 3 hours ago. He cleared out his apartment, his bank accounts, everything. He knows we're on to him. Which means Volkov knows. Victor's mind was already calculating. How long do we have? Cole's last known location was 40 minutes from your position. If he gave up your location before he ran, you have maybe 2 hours before Volkov's men arrive. Maybe less. Victor was already moving, grabbing their emergency bag, checking weapons. Where's the extraction point? Brooklyn Bridge Park, south entrance. 30 minutes. We'll have a full team. But Sokolov, if Volkov's men intercept you before then, we can't help. You're on your own. Understood. Victor hung up and turned to Mila. We're leaving. Now everything you need. Take it now. Mila grabbed her notebook, shoved it into her jacket pocket. She'd learned not to ask questions when Victor used that tone. They left the apartment within 90 seconds. The stairwell was empty. Too empty. Victor's instincts screamed danger. He held up a hand, stopping Mila on the landing. Footsteps echoed below them. Multiple sets, moving up. Back. Victor reversed direction, pulling Mila up the stairs. They climbed quickly, quietly, heading for the roof access. Behind them, doors slammed open. Voices shouted in Russian. Someone had spotted them. Run. Victor pushed Mila ahead of him. Don't look back. They burst through the roof access door. Cold morning air hit them. The building was 8 stories, surrounded by other buildings of similar height. Victor scanned the roofline, calculating. There. He pointed to the next building. 3-foot gap. We jump. Mila looked at the distance between buildings. Her face went pale. I can't. You can. Victor gripped her shoulders. I'll go first. You follow. Trust me. The roof access door behind them slammed open. 3 men emerged, weapons drawn. Victor didn't hesitate. He ran and launched himself across the gap, landed hard, rolled, came up in a crouch, his hand extended back toward Mila. Come on, now. Mila heard footsteps pounding closer. She backed up, took 3 running steps, and jumped. For one terrifying moment, she was suspended in empty air, 8 stories of nothing beneath her. Then Victor's hands caught her wrists, yanked her forward. She crashed into him, and they both hit the roof hard. Gunshots cracked behind them, bullets pinged off the roof edge. Victor pulled Mila behind a ventilation unit and returned fire. 2 quick shots. 1 man went down. Keep moving. Victor reloaded as they ran. Building to building, they jumped gaps that seemed impossible. Mila's legs burned, her lungs screamed, but she didn't stop. They reached a building with a fire escape. Victor sent her down first, covering her descent. More men appeared on adjacent rooftops. Volkov had sent a full team. The fire escape ended in an alley. Victor dropped the last 10 feet, landing in a crouch. Mila jumped and he caught her. They ran. 3 blocks. Victor's breathing was controlled despite the sprint. Brooklyn Bridge Park. Don't stop for anything. Black SUVs turned the corner ahead. More behind. They were being boxed in. Victor changed direction, pulling Mila into a narrow passage between buildings. Too narrow for vehicles. They emerged onto a busier street. Morning commuters everywhere. Victor holstered his weapon. In a crowd they had a chance. Stay close, act normal. Victor took Mila's hand. To anyone watching, they looked like father and daughter on an early morning walk. But Mila could feel Victor's tension. His eyes never stopped moving, cataloging threats, calculating exits. And behind them she knew Volkov's men were still coming. They reached the park entrance. Agent Chen stood next to 3 black SUVs, surrounded by armed agents. She saw them and waved urgently. 50 feet. Victor kept his pace steady. Don't run. Walk. A car engine roared behind them. Tires squealed. Victor spun, pushing Mila ahead. Go. Run to them. Mila ran. Behind her she heard gunfire, screaming. She didn't look back. Couldn't look back. Agent Chen's men rushed forward, surrounding her with a wall of bodies. Return fire echoed through the morning air. Where's Victor? Mila tried to turn around. Chen held her shoulders. He's covering your extraction. Chen pulled her toward the SUV. We need to move now. No. Mila fought against her grip. I'm not leaving him. That wasn't the deal. Chen's voice was firm but not unkind. He keeps you safe until we extract you. That's what he's doing. Through the chaos, Mila caught one last glimpse of Victor, standing in the middle of the street, weapon drawn, facing down 3 of Volkov's men, buying her time with his life. Their eyes met for one brief moment. Victor nodded once, a farewell, an acknowledgement, permission to go. Then Agent Chen shoved Mila into the SUV and slammed the door. The vehicle pulled away fast. Mila pressed her face against the rear window, watching the scene recede. Victor was still standing, still fighting, still alone. Just like he'd always been, just like he'd chosen to be again for her. The SUV turned a corner, and he disappeared from view. Mila clutched her notebook against her chest. The only proof that the last 6 days had been real. That the Phantom had stopped being invisible long enough to save her life. The FBI safe house was in upstate New York. 3 hours from the city, surrounded by woods, protected by agents who rotated shifts every 6 hours. It should have felt safe. It felt like a prison. Mila sat in a sterile bedroom, her notebook open on the bed. She'd drawn the same face 17 times, Victor's face, each sketch slightly different as she tried to capture the exact expression he'd worn in that final moment. Agent Chen knocked and entered without waiting for permission. How are you settling in? Fine. Mila didn't look up from her drawing. The psychologist will be here tomorrow. She'll help you process everything you've been through. Chen sat on the edge of the bed. I know this is hard. Is he alive? Mila's pencil stopped moving. Victor, is he alive? Chen's hesitation was answer enough. We don't know. He disappeared after the extraction. No body was recovered, but there was significant blood at the scene, multiple casualties on Volkov's side. So he might be alive. Mila looked up finally. He's the Phantom. He's survived worse. Maybe. Chen chose her words carefully. But Mila, you need to understand something. Viktor Sokolov is not a good man. He's killed dozens of people. Maybe hundreds. What he did for you doesn't change that. He saved my life. Mila's voice was flat. Multiple times. That changes something. He was protecting an asset. Information that could bring down Volkov. Chen's voice softened. I'm not saying he didn't care about you, but men like him don't change. They don't suddenly become heroes. You're wrong. Mila returned to her sketching. He changed. I saw it. Chen left without another word. Mila continued drawing, trying to remember every detail of Viktor's apartment. The empty refrigerator, the hidden weapons, the chair where he'd sit for hours, watching the street below. Days blurred together. The psychologist came. Mila answered questions in monosyllables. They talked about trauma, about grief, about survivor's guilt. None of it touched what Mila actually felt. She felt abandoned. Again. First her parents, now Viktor. Everyone who was supposed to protect her ended up leaving, dead or disappeared. The result was the same. On the 8th day, Agent Chen brought news. We've arrested Sergei Volkov. Your father's testimony, combined with your documentation, gave us everything we needed. He's looking at life in prison. Good. Mila barely reacted. What about the others? The men who killed my parents? Most are dead, or in custody. Chen pulled out a tablet, showing her photos. These 3 are still at large, but they've fled the country. You're safe now, Mila. Truly safe. Safe. Mila tested the word. It felt hollow. I want to go back to the city. That's not possible. Your new identity is being prepared. New name, new background, new location. You'll start fresh somewhere Volkov's organization can never find you. I don't want a new identity. Mila's voice rose. I want my life back. Your life doesn't exist anymore. Chen's tone was firm but sympathetic. Your parents are gone. Your old apartment is a crime scene. Your school, your friends, everything you knew is compromised. This is the only way. Mila threw her notebook across the room. It hit the wall and fell open, pages of sketches scattering across the floor. Chen didn't move to pick them up. I know you're angry. Chen stood. But this anger will pass. In a year, maybe 2, you'll understand that we saved you, that this was necessary. You didn't save me. Mila's voice cracked. Viktor saved me, and you left him to die. We gave him the chance to walk away. He chose to stay and fight. That was his decision. Chen moved toward the door. I'm sorry, Mila. I truly am. But this is how witness protection works. Clean break, no looking back. She left. Mila sat alone in the sterile room, surrounded by scattered drawings. She picked up the nearest one. Viktor's face, expressionless as always, but with something in the eyes she'd tried to capture. Something human. That night, Mila made a decision. She waited until the late shift agent was drowsy, the one who always nodded off around 3 in the morning. She packed her notebook, the oversized jacket Viktor had given her, and the small amount of cash she'd hidden from the FBI's initial intake. The window in her room didn't lock properly. She'd noticed on day 2 but hadn't said anything. Now she opened it slowly, carefully, and climbed out. The safe house was surrounded by woods, but Mila had memorized the patrol patterns. She knew exactly when and where the gaps appeared. She moved through them like a ghost. Like Viktor had taught her, though he'd never explicitly taught her anything. She just watched, learned, absorbed his survival instincts through proximity. She walked for 2 hours before reaching a main road, hitched a ride with a trucker who didn't ask questions, told him she was going to visit her aunt in the city. Back in New York by dawn, the city she knew, the streets she'd memorized. She made her way to Brighton Beach, to the neighborhood where everything had started. Viktor's apartment building stood unchanged. Mila climbed the fire escape to his floor. The window to his apartment was locked, but she knew where he kept the spare key, behind the loose brick 3 from the bottom. She let herself in. The apartment was exactly as they'd left it, empty, cold, waiting. Mila sat in Viktor's chair, the one facing the window. She opened her notebook and continued sketching. If he was alive, he'd come back here eventually. This was his anchor point, his home base. And if he was dead, then at least she'd waited. At least she'd tried. Hours passed. The sun rose higher. Mila's eyes grew heavy. She hadn't slept properly in days. The exhaustion finally caught up with her. She dozed off in Victor's chair, her notebook falling open in her lap. The sound of a key in the lock woke her. Mila's eyes snapped open. The door opened slowly, carefully. A figure entered, moving with practiced silence. Victor. He was alive. Barely. His left arm was bandaged. He moved stiffly, favoring his ribs. Blood had seeped through his jacket in several places. He saw her, and froze. "What are you doing here?" Mila stood slowly, waiting for you. "They told you I was dead." Victor closed the door behind him, checking the hallway first. "They said they didn't know." Mila moved toward him. "But I knew you weren't dead. You're too stubborn to die." Victor studied her for a long moment. "You escaped federal protection. Do you understand how much danger that puts you in?" "Less danger than staying there." Mila crossed her arms. "Volkov's in prison. His organization is destroyed. Agent Chen said so herself. There are always others." Victor winced as he moved to his hidden weapons cache. "Revenge, territory disputes, anyone who wants leverage. You just made yourself a target again." "Then you'll protect me again." Mila's voice was steady. "That's why I came back." "I can't." Victor pulled out medical supplies, began treating his wounds with mechanical efficiency. "I barely survived the extraction. I'm compromised, wounded, not at full capacity." "So heal." Mila picked up her notebook from the floor. "I'll wait." Victor's hands stopped moving. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since entering. This child who'd somehow become attached to a killer, who'd chosen him over safety, over a new life, over everything the FBI offered. "You're 11 years old." Victor's voice was quieter now. "You deserve better than this. Better than me." "Maybe." Mila sat back down in his chair. "But this is what I'm choosing. You don't get to decide for me." Silence stretched between them. Victor knew he should call Agent Chen, should turn Mila over to proper authorities, should do the responsible thing. But when had he ever been responsible? He finished bandaging his wounds and sat heavily on the couch. His body ached, his vision blurred with exhaustion. 2 days, Victor's voice was rough. "I need 2 days to heal, then we figure out what comes next." "Okay." Mila pulled the blanket over herself. 2 days. Victor closed his eyes. For the first time in 6 days, he allowed himself to rest, because somehow impossibly, he trusted this 11-year-old girl to keep watch. And across the room, Mila opened her notebook and began drawing again. Not Victor this time, something new. A future neither of them had planned for, but both of them, against all logic, wanted. Victor woke 48 hours later to find Mila watching the street below from his usual position. She'd learned his routine perfectly, observing without being seen. "You should have woken me sooner." Victor sat up slowly, testing his injuries. The pain had dulled to a manageable ache. "You needed rest." Mila didn't turn from the window. "Besides, nothing happened. No cars, no surveillance. Nobody's looking for us yet." Yet, Victor moved to the kitchen and started coffee. "The FBI will realize you're gone by now. They'll be searching." "Let them search." Mila finally turned to face him. "I'm not going back." Victor poured 2 cups of coffee, added sugar to Mila's without asking. She'd complained the first time he made it black. "This isn't sustainable. We can't stay here." "So where do we go?" Mila accepted the cup, warming her hands against it. Victor had spent his sleeping hours dreaming, something he rarely did. Not nightmares this time. Plans, possibilities, things he'd never allowed himself to consider. "I know a place, in Estonia, small village, off any grid, quiet." He sat across from her. "I have resources there. Money, documents, a house nobody knows about." Estonia. Mila tested the word. "That's far." "That's the point." Victor met her eyes. "But Mila, you need to understand what you'd be choosing. No school, no friends your age, no normal life, just survival, just hiding." "I haven't had a normal life since my father started documenting the Bratva." Mila's voice was matter-of-fact. "Normal is already gone. At least with you, I'm choosing my own future." Victor wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she deserved better, but he recognized the steel in her voice. She'd made her decision, and nothing would change it. The moment of calm shattered with a knock at the door. 3 sharp raps, a pause, 2 more, a pattern Victor didn't recognize. Back room. Now, Victor pulled his weapon and moved to the door silently. Mila disappeared into the bedroom without hesitation. Victor checked the peephole. A woman in her 60s stood in the hallway, holding a casserole dish. His neighbor from 2 floors down, Mrs. Kozlov. the building gossip. He opened the door a crack. Yes? Mr. Sokolov. Mrs. Kozlov's smile was bright, but her eyes were calculating. I made too much borscht. Thought you might want some. Viktor knew a probe when he saw one. Someone had sent her to verify if he was home. Thank you, but I'm fine. You've been away. Mrs. Kozlov tried to peer past him into the apartment. The building manager was asking, said you hadn't paid this month's rent. I'll pay tomorrow. Viktor kept his body blocking the entrance. Is there anything else? Mrs. Kozlov's smile faded slightly. There were men here last week, looking for you. Very serious men. They asked many questions. What did you tell them? Viktor's hand tightened on his concealed weapon. Nothing, of course. Mrs. Kozlov's tone shifted, became sharper, because I'm smart enough to know when someone is dangerous, and I know you are very dangerous, Mr. Sokolov. She set the casserole dish on the floor in the hallway. But those men? They're more dangerous, and they're coming back. Tonight, I heard them talking to the building manager an hour ago. Why are you telling me this? Viktor studied her face. They made it to the Canadian border by midnight. Viktor had fake passports for both of them, documents so perfect they'd been created by the same forger who supplied half the intelligence agencies in North America. At the crossing, the border agent studied their papers. Father and daughter traveling to visit family in Montreal. The story was simple, believable. The agent looked at Mila. What's your name, sweetheart? Mila didn't hesitate. Anna Volkov. The irony of using her enemy's surname wasn't lost on Viktor, but the agent simply smiled and stamped their documents. They crossed into Canada without incident. Viktor didn't relax until they were 50 miles past the border. The Montreal safe house was another anonymous apartment. Clean, functional, temporary. They'd only be here 36 hours before their flight to Tallinn. Mila sat at the kitchen table while Viktor made tea. Real tea this time, not just hot water in old bags. He was learning. Agent Chen called 3 times today. Mila had been monitoring Viktor's burner phone. She left voicemails. She sounds worried. She should be worried. Viktor set the tea in front of Mila. She lost a federal witness. That's a career-ending mistake. I could call her. Tell her I'm okay. Mila wrapped her hands around the warm cup. No contact. Viktor's voice was firm. The moment you make contact, they'll trace it. Try to bring you back. We're ghosts now, completely off the grid. Mila nodded, but something in her expression shifted. Viktor sat across from her. What? Nothing. Mila stared into her tea. You're a terrible liar. Viktor's tone softened slightly. What's wrong? I was just thinking about my parents. Mila's voice was quiet. If they could see me now, would they be proud? Or would they think I made the wrong choice? Viktor considered the question carefully. Your father spent 6 months documenting the Bratva because he wanted to protect you. He wanted you to have a life free from that world. And instead I'm living with a killer, running from the FBI, using a fake name. Mila looked up at him. That's not what he wanted. No, Viktor met her eyes, but he also taught you to survive, to document everything, to trust your instincts. You're using all of those skills now. To hide. To run. Mila's voice cracked slightly. That's not a life. It's the life we have. Viktor reached across the table, an unusual gesture for him. But Mila, I need you to understand something. What we're building in Estonia, it's not just hiding, it's starting over. How? We'll always be looking over our shoulders, always waiting for someone to find us. Maybe. Viktor's voice was steady. But we'll be looking over our shoulders together. That's different than being alone. Mila studied his face. When did you stop being alone? The night you knocked on my door. Viktor allowed himself a small smile. You ruined 20 years of careful isolation in about 30 seconds. Sorry. Mila's expression lightened slightly. Don't be. Viktor stood and moved to the window, checking the street below out of habit. Being alone was easier. But this, whatever this is, it's better. They spent the next day preparing. Viktor obtained new documents, arranged their flights, secured transportation from Tallinn to Kesipara. Every detail planned with military precision. Mila practiced her new identity, Anna Volkov, 12 years old, originally from St. Petersburg, daughter of Viktor Sokolov, import-export businessman. The lies came easier than she expected. That evening, as they packed their final bags, Mila pulled out her notebook. She'd filled every page with drawings, documentation, memories of a life that no longer existed. I should leave this behind. Mila held it like a sacred object. Start fresh with blank pages. No. Viktor took the notebook and carefully placed it in her bag. Your past doesn't disappear just because you change your name. It's part of you, part of what made you strong enough to survive. But it's evidence. If anyone finds it, they'll know who we are. Then we make sure nobody finds it. Victor zipped the bag closed. Besides, those drawings are good. You have talent. In Estonia, you'll keep drawing. Keep creating. That doesn't stop. Promise? Mila looked at him with an expression that reminded Victor achingly of his own daughter. Promise. Victor placed a hand on her shoulder. We're not just surviving anymore, Mila. We're living. There's a difference. The next morning, they boarded a flight to Tallinn. As the plane lifted off, Mila pressed her face against the window, watching North America disappear below them. Scared? Victor asked. No, Mila settled back in her seat. For the first time in weeks, I'm not scared. She reached out and took Victor's hand. He didn't pull away. Two people who'd lost everything, holding on to each other as they flew toward an unknown future. The phantom and the girl who'd made him visible, the killer who'd learned to protect instead of destroy, the orphan who'd found family in the most unlikely place. They were damaged. They were dangerous. They were running from half a dozen organizations that wanted them dead or captured. But they were together. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. The plane climbed higher, carrying them toward Estonia. Toward a small village where nobody asked questions. Toward a life they'd build from nothing. Victor looked at Mila, who'd fallen asleep against his shoulder, her notebook clutched to her chest. He'd spent 20 years as a ghost. 20 years invisible. 20 years alone. Not anymore. He closed his eyes and allowed himself something he hadn't felt in 2 decades. Hope. The phantom had finally found something worth protecting, and he would never let it go.